Swiss Vetterli rifles. In this video, part of my series, we're just going to do kind of a crash course on this. I'm not getting into the history. I'm not getting into all the different variations. There's a lot of people that make videos, talk about the history of this gun and everything else. Well, what we have here is Vetterli designed, and this is the first cartridge magazine fed rifle, repeating rifle, ever adopted by any military, and that was 1869. So this gun design was way ahead of its time. Now when it comes to Vetterlis and the different variations, they started off with one model in 1869 and they made changes, but they were gradual. They were progressive changes. They didn't just stop all at once and start manufacturing a different model. They kind of changed it over time, very gradually. And there was a number of manufacturers of these rifles. So what you're going to find with the Vetterlis is you're going to have two distinct types. Now, I'm not going to cover carbines, because yes, carbines do exist and were made, but I've never seen one. I have never examined one. And there are a lot of companies that took these rifles when they were surplus in the 20s and cut them down. Now in the old days they could have done a real good job, but I'm not sure enough about Vetterli carbines to even, number one, I don't own one, and number two, I know nothing about them, so I can't verify if they're real or not. Okay? And you will find sporterized and cut down variations of this gun. Okay, because when they came up for sale in the early 20s, they weren't that popular, and they started sporterizing them and to make sales a little bit better. Okay, and some of them were fairly professionally done. So what you're going to find out is basically I'm going to lump this into two major groups. There's an older style up here on the top, okay, and it's distinctively different from the later style, which is like the 1878s, 80s, 81s. I believe this is an 80 down here. So what you're going to look for is this. The earlier guns had a more flat butt plate, which then later on they went to this more curved target shooting type butt plate. The trigger guard you see changed a little bit in its shape. And then another giveaway is the rear sight. This is an older style sight, was on a lot of the Swiss guns, this old sight, even like I think on single shots in a musket. And as you see the sight, there's a couple variations of this newer sight, which that's the visible difference. That's how you know. Also, the one main difference is the forward part of the stock here, the hand stock here. Earlier versions, okay, some of the real early versions didn't have this wedge. This was added. The earlier versions will have this like hand checkering. They will have two barrel bands and a nose cap. Where the later style got rid of the checkering, has the reinforcement wedge, will only have one barrel band and a nose cap. Okay, I think after 78 or something they went to this style. They kind of got rid of it. I'm not quite sure exactly what year they did it. And there is a variance in chamber dimensions. They did change the ammunition from one type to the other, and there was a variance in chambering. But what's hard about this is because with all the different manufacturers, you will get variances in the chambering. So when it comes time to make ammunition to shoot, I found that when you form it from one type of cartridge, it'll fit into some rifles, but not in all. And the length, either 38 in the style bullet I use, that will fit into all. Where if you go with 42, it'll fit into some. I could use a different style bullet, but it will not fit into every rifle. Okay? But that, in a nutshell, is your different variations you know, and there's little sub years and stuff of these, but basically that's what you're going to look at. You're going to find them either an older style like on the top, which is blatantly obvious, or the later or newer styles like this here. Okay, and like I said, when it comes to carbines and all that other stuff, I don't know if they're cut down. I've never really seen a verifiable original one. Alright, so that there you're kind of on your own. Now let me go over the reference book real quick. Alright, I strongly suggest if you're really into these guns or going to collect them, or you know, are interested in Swiss guns and identifying them so you don't get screwed, buy this book. Now be warned, this book should cost about 40 bucks. But because Swiss guns, because this does cover the Swiss straight pulls, they're extremely popular. So you're going to probably pay over $100 for this book. This book is a generalized book, okay? Gives you models, variations, descriptions, and everything else. It is very useful in helping you learn how to identify these guns. While not as in-depth and comprehensive as probably something else that's probably written in their language, it's a good start. Because sending me an email, asking me a question, I don't mind answering them, but I get inundated with all these questions of like, why doesn't a bolt do this? Why does this? How does this work? Okay. I don't mind answering them, but you know, when I get flooded with them, it's hard for me to get back to you and answer these questions. You should, for your own, you know, well-being as a collector, start to accumulate books and learn for yourself. Knowledge is kind of the key, and this is how you don't get screwed in this hobby. All right? So I highly recommend you break down and buy this book. Okay? Now we're going to go on to the functioning of the action and the technical aspects of it. Okay, as far as the operation on this rifle, what Vetterli did is when he studied overseas, he came across the Henry and the Winchester designed rifles. Okay, and he really liked the idea. Now, lever action guns have been tested by a lot of militaries, and there were versions and models that were made to some number. Winchester made some. The Russians had a lever gun that they bought from Winchester. Winchester tried marketing it as a military weapon. But the one giant drawback to a lever action gun is you must have room under the gun to operate it to make it function. Well, in the military, laying in a prone position, trying not to get your ass shot off, that is a problem. Okay? So for general military use, the lever gun is not ideal. Where Vetterli came up with something, he adopted basically a Winchester 73 style action with a bolt. So your operation is up top, and you don't, laying in the prone position, you don't have to worry about operating a lever. So that's kind of the genius of this weapon. Now, first thing, this weapon does not have, my arm's getting tired, this weapon does not have a safety. Okay, there's no manual safety. So on a lot of these older guns, you have to have a visible indication to the operator that the gun, now as this is here, okay, the gun is fired, there is no pressure on the firing pin spring, the action is closed. I can tell this because what Vetterli designed is right here. Now watch when I cock the action. Now you draw up the bolt, okay, and this works just like a Winchester. You draw the bolt back, the loading gate comes up, brings up a shell, you close the bolt back down, close it, and now if you look, this striker rod protrudes. So this was a visual indicator that the gun is cocked and probably loaded. So you should check it. When you see this little tail come out, that's it. And like I said, without a safety, you have to have a fairly well visible indicator, okay, which this is. Much like on a Martini Henry, they have that little arm that'll show you when the gun is fired, and when you work the action and the action's cocked and ready to go, it comes over. There is no safety on a Martini Henry. So guns of this time period generally didn't have safeties. A lot of them were single shots, so you only loaded the damn gun when you were ready to fire it on command. Warfare was a little bit different. So this is what you have here. Now the original ones did have a magazine cut off and can be operated as a single shot rifle, but they figured out like within a year or two, and that was eliminated. Also the dust cover that was on here was eliminated, and this is like right off the Winchester. That's another thing. There were a lot of rifles with tubular magazines, but you would have to, like on the Mauser and on the Lebel, you would have to open action up, get the lift plate down, and then push your cartridges one at a time down, up, and through the action, which could be a pain in the butt. Where this gun can be loaded from the side, again in the prone position. Just load one in there, two, okay, and you can do that while at the ready with the gun closed, ready to fire. Alright? That's the beauty of this gun. Alright, so yes, it was very advanced technically, but here's the shortcomings, the same thing of the Winchester and everything else. The cartridge, this is a cartridge that I make. It's kind of similar. It's the 38 millimeter, uses a healed bullet, about 310 grains in weight. Now the original one was a paper patch bullet with black powder. They did try a bullet with like a little hollow base in it without the paper patch, and then commercially made ammunition's kind of similar looking to this. Whatever Winchester and Remington made back in the 20s for these guns is different than what that Swiss actually used. It's kind of more similar to a bullet like this, okay? But I think the one disadvantage to this gun was that the power of this cartridge was not, it's not up there with like the 50-70, the 45-70, the 43 Mauser, or a lot of those, 43 Spanish. A lot of the cartridges that went in a single shot rifle, be it a Remington or a Henry Martini, that was a powerful cartridge, didn't have the power. So that was one shortcoming. It was a repeater. It had a halfway decent cartridge. It's better than the 44 Henry. I've shot this at 200-300 yards, but how it would compare military-wise to the other ones, it's kind of small and underpowered, which is the drawback from using this type of system, both in the lever or this Vetterli bolt-action rifle. And this will come into play later on when we get into where the Italians adopted this gun. Okay, so that's your basic operation of this. That's how you load the ammo up through here. And much like a Winchester, this bolt, so instead of camming with the lever, this bolt catches an arm. And when we go over the technical inspection getting ready to fire, if you watch, it pops that loading gate up. And basically when you put that cartridge in here, it's in this. So this comes up, lines the cartridge up, and then your bolt will take it in, drop this, and then the arm pushes that back down, and then the other cartridge pops out of the mag down into here. Pretty slick design. Way ahead of its time, but like I said, the shortcoming is the action is not that strong. This is not able to handle a cartridge as powerful as some of the other early single-shot rifle cartridges. And also another downfall is this gun is fairly heavy. Granted, you got like 10, 12 rounds of ammo and you got superior firepower, but this gun is heavy, cumbersome, you know, not horribly bad, but it is compared to like a Remington rolling block. It's easy to wield around, aim, and hold. I'm getting tired just holding this thing up, you know, with my bad arm for a few minutes here. So for what this is, it's kind of an extremely heavy weapon. All right. So that's kind of the look at it from the pluses and the minuses. The Swiss were never really engaged in a lot of warfare, so this gun was never really used in battle. Okay, years later, as surplus, they tried smuggling some of this into a country to start a revolution. They were bought as surplus, but the ship crashed or got run aground and the arms were thrown into the ocean, so it never really seen combat, so it can never be said whether this system worked or how effective it was compared to other guns in actual military use. But still, a neat gun. That covers just about all the pluses and minuses in it. Now in the next video, we're going to go about how to take it apart, what to look for, how to clean it, and get it to where you can shoot it. Okay, I'm going to go over that in detail. All right, thanks.